I will begin by giving you a little biographical information for each of them, starting with Njeri Mbure. Njeri is the Client Service Executive at Corporate Staffing Services Limited in Kenya, where she oversees the day-to-day marketing and communication activities and responding to clients' needs. Before joining CSS, Njeri taught media and communications at Tangaza University College, a constituent college of Catholic University of Eastern Africa. She is passionate about digital storytelling and impacting the lives of Kenyan youth. She has been involved as a Kenyan representative to the African World Heritage Youth Fora. Be the change you want to see is Njeri's life mantra. She is actively involved as a volunteer for Shilling Library, an initiative focused on cultivating the reading culture in Kenya. She is an avid photographer and mentor for the Young African Leadership Initiative, YALI, which many of you know. She holds a master's in science in applied communication, advertising, and public relations from Fitchburg State University in Massachusetts, USA. She is also a board member of the Women's Leadership Initiative, WLI, acting as the official photographer and media liaison. So welcome to Njeri, and thank you very much. And our second speaker, I'll just introduce each one of them now for the bio portion. Our second speaker is Albinus Guituru. Alba is a seasoned development practitioner with over 15 years of experience in management and implementation of development programs in education, health, youth empowerment, community media, economic empowerment, and gender programming. Guituru has worked in various nonprofit organizations and has exposure in development organization management from a community-based organization level to an international NGO level. He is a pioneer member of Slums Information Development and Resources Centers, having steered the organization from its inception to gain international accolades and win international awards such as the One Foundation Excellence Award in Poverty Alleviation Strategies and the STARS Impact Award in Education. He has managed high-level donor-funded projects with international NGOs, including Comic Relief, USAID, UKAID, and Ford Foundation, among others. Gituru has a diploma in youth development work from Dar es Salaam University, a degree in sociology and psychology from the University of Nairobi, an MA in monitoring and evaluation of development programs from the University of Nairobi, and a master's degree in health promotion and international development from the University College London. He is currently the programs director at AmericaShare and the executive director for the Center for Empowerment and Integrated Development in Kenya. Welcome to Alba. Thank you very much for being here. And then our third speaker comes from our own family, Paul Owuor, who is a WMI graduate scholar from Kenya. Paul is a 2016 graduate from the University of Kabianga as a nursing officer. He currently works on the accident and emergency and coverage staff at Premier Hospital in Mombasa, Kenya. Paul serves as the executive director of the Wells Mountain Initiative Kenya Fellowship. He is also the Washindi Africa CBO Sexual and Reproductive Health Coordinator. Paul is the CEO and founder of Get Up Speak Out Kenya, a CBO, and a CBO championing for sexual and reproductive health among the youth. And welcome very much to Paul. Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited about this webinar and everyone's presentations. So let us begin with Njeri first. And I'm going to remove myself from the speaker view while you present. Thank you very much. Well, it looks as if perhaps our first speaker lost her connection. So let me see. Jerry, are you able to stay connected for the first session?
So the internet is unstable, but I should be good.
Okay, we'll give it a go. And if things don't work out, we can shuffle you around. I'll give a couple more minutes for Jerry to see if she can connect. And one thing I neglected to mention to all of the attendees is we will be having a question and answer session at the end. So please type in your questions or comments in the Q&A box that you can access at the bottom of your screen. Okay. You ready, Jerry?
Yes, I can go ahead.
Great. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. So I am so happy to be here on this day that you guys are learning about interviews. It's good to hear about the journey that each one and every one of you in the academy is learning. I'm very proud of Paul as one of your alumni, and it's just amazing to be here today. So as you already heard from Lisa, I am Njeri Mbure. I work at the Corporate Staffing Services. And so ideally what we do is that we are a HR firm, and we are in the business, just give me a minute. Sorry, the internet keeps dropping, but I hope you can stay with me. All right, so when we're looking at business interviews, first of all, we are looking at a situation where you've finished your degree or your diploma and you're looking into going into the job field. So that's very exciting news. And so one of the things that happens for you to be called for an interview, you've been identified as one who is in possession of the skills and the experience that All right, please bear with me and let me just switch off my video and I'll just share my screen. The internet keeps acting up, it keeps throwing me out, but I hope we can finish successfully. Yeah, so one of the things that we are here to do is that the employer is looking to see if you're a great fit for the company and that you understand your role, and that mostly importantly that you're actually genuinely interested in the position. So the reason for this is because some people, because of desperate times, are looking for jobs, and sometimes people are interested in the money that is being offered and they're not genuinely interested in their job. So the interview is going to gauge all these experiences and so much more. So we're going to go into the types of interviews. And so, yes. So the first type we have is the formal and informal interviews. So at corporate staffing, we do a lot of the formal and not informal as such, but mostly formal. And so I'm just going to go through them right now, and then we're going to go a bit into more details about them. So we also have the structured and the patterned interviews as well. Then we have the unstructured interviews. And then at the fourth one is group or activities or interviews. And then we also have in-depth interviews. Then we have the panel or the board interviews, and then we have the exit interviews, and we have some walk-in interviews, and then lastly, we have the phone or video interviews. So when I go into the formal and informal, as I said that here at Corporate Staffing, we do a lot of the formal ones. These are pretty much those planned and well-arranged interviews where we already line up candidates based on their first screening. And so they've made it for an interview based on either their experiences and their skills. So it's conducted in a formal setting in a fixed venue as well, and even the time. For example, for us, we always have them in our boardrooms where we either have a one-on-one or a group interview. So it's normally conducted through an individual or a panel of interviewees, depending on the stage of interviewing which you're in. If it's mostly the first one, we can have a one-on-one interview just to get to know the candidate and determine if they're a good fit. But if it's the second stage of the interview, we could have a panel of interviewers, which is composed of recruiters and the company that is hiring. So the other one is that the formalities and procedures are followed. So we have a place where it's very formal. Even the way people dress to come for the interview, even the language that is spoken, it is not informal in any way. And so even the questions to be asked are decided well in advance. So pretty much the interviewer or the recruiter has already prepared the questions based on the person's, again, experience and skills, even before they come for the interview. Then vis-a-vis that, we have informal interviews, where in this case we have unplanned and they're not scheduled at all. So what happens is that they can take place anywhere. There is not a set venue and the time is not fixed as well. And so unlike the formal one, the questions here are not prepared well in advance. So what happens in Kenya, this is not common. We do not have very many informal interviews, but a situation I can think of is, for example, you meet this CEO who you've been following on social media, or you've been following their company and what they're doing. And so you've always probably wanted to work for this organization. And so what happens is that you meet with them, and what happens is that you do not know that it's an informal interview, but for the person, maybe the CEO, once you meet them and you tell them, hi, my name is maybe Njeri, I've been wanting to work for your organization for so long. What they're doing is an informal interview. So from this, you could actually get a call to come for a formal interview based on that meeting that you had with the top management or a senior person or the CEO. Then we have the second one as the structured or the patterned interview. So this is a fully planned interview. It could be formal in nature, but as I continue, you'll actually see the difference between this and the formal one. So the questions to be asked are already structured. So the questions have been typed out, and the time allocated to each candidate and the information to be collected is also predetermined. So we're looking at, for example, having 5 interviewees coming in a day, and each one of them has 15 minutes. So that's the time allocation. And even the information to be collected from each could also be uniform, where we are asking the same exact questions to see if we'll get answers that are either uniform with the industry or their experience as such. So the interviewer is also carefully selected. So in this case, you just do not select anyone. For example, for us, if we have a recruiter, you take a recruiter who is actually very conversant in that field. Say if it is IT, if it is banking, if it is accounting, you take someone who is actually very familiar so that they are able to gauge whether the candidate is good or not. So also, because it's structured, the interviewer does not have any time to deviate. They do not have time or even the questions. So since the questions are there, you ask exactly as they are, get an answer, and you move on to the next question. So a standardized pattern is adopted to conduct the interview. So pretty much from, say you have 5 people coming in, the same exact interview for the first person is going to be the same exact for the second person. The only thing that is changing is the candidates. So for the third one, we have the unstructured or the non-directive. So this is, of course, the opposite of the structured one, where it is not planned and has no structure, very closely related to the informal one as well. So the questions to be asked, the time allowed, and the responses are not put into consideration in advance. So unlike the structured one, where they even have a copy of the same questions to be asked to the candidates, this one, it's not the same. The questions have not been thought of, they've not been allocated any time. And so what happens in such an interview is that they're broad general questions where the candidate is asked based on their individual experience, individual skills. And so the candidate is given an opportunity to speak his mind freely without any restriction. So because there's no restriction of time, say for example, the interview in the structured has a timer. So when your time is up to answer a question, you cannot go beyond that. It doesn't matter whether your point was finished or not. But in the unstructured one, you actually have space to wiggle. You have some wiggle room to at least explain and even just go broad on some topics. So the fourth one is the group interview or activity. So this is a very interesting interview technique. So it's used to test the candidate's confidence and communication skills. So just as the name is, you're coming in as a group where you could either be interviewed as a group or even just be given an activity. So an example could be that you're given a problem to solve. You could be given either, depending on the industry that you're in, if, for example, you're in manufacturing, you could be given a practical activity, or even if you're coming in for a corporate interview, you could be given a brainstorming session to come up with either a solution for a social problem or a technical problem. So one of the things that this does is that it shows the ability of the candidate to reason and to analyze given situations. So this one can be judged by more than one person, where one person is assigned to a candidate, because they are judging a lot of things. They're judging the way you're behaving in a group, they're judging your skills, your leadership skills, and even just your teamwork. It's measured because some people can decide to lay back, or some people can get very actively involved. In a group interview, some others can be very dominant, and that can be seen. And so they can be seen that they are not working well with other people. And so actions and reactions of the members in the groups are observed. And that's exactly what you're talking about. If you have someone who has a short temper and is getting maybe a bit pissed off by the way the others are not doing things the way they'd want them to do, that is it's going to be seen in such an interview. And also the beauty of it is that a potential candidate is selected. What happens after this interview? They could go now for a formal or a structured interview. It can also take, as I say, the form of a discussion. Say it could be, they'd be told, okay, fine, let us discuss the current trends in technology. And so depending on how each one of them is contributing, they'll be gauged on that. So factors like eye contact, body language can be seen, and they are taken into consideration. So sometimes in group activities, they can also be told to come up with a document. For example, they could be told to come up with a document that either determines maybe like a policy or sort. And so that one is also gauging their knowledge in that particular industry and so on. So the fifth one is in-depth interviews. So pretty much the word says in-depth. They want to get more knowledge. So this one is conducted to test the candidate's in-depth knowledge in a special area of subject, a job, or even the interest. Say, for example, you tell us that you are passionate about maybe health, as Mr. Paul is. So they would want to know, do you understand the issues that come with maybe the health sector? Do you understand maybe the latest research that is going on in that particular area? And so questions are really asked to test the candidate's capacity in the concerned area. So they just want to see, do you actually understand? You know, because sometimes we do get degrees and you come out when you're not very competent in that area. So an in-depth interview is going to be able to see the candidates who are not knowledgeable in that particular field. So again, it's a very good method to thoroughly examine a candidate, because, for example, most of what happens for our jobs, we do write the responsibilities that the candidate is going to be taking care of. So one of the things that we've seen is sometimes candidates, they go back to their job description and they copy paste some of those things on their CV. And so an in-depth interview would be perfect to know, for example, if this IT person says that they understand cloud solutions, or you're in business and you understand maybe QuickBooks. Do you actually, can you be able to do it? Do you understand the various things that are involved in that process? So this interview is a step-by-step method to get a very good integrated view of the skills and personality of the candidate. So the sixth one is the exit interview. So when we have an exit interview, this happens when a particular person wants to leave a company that they've been working for. It's in Kenya, to be honest, it doesn't happen many times, but there are those few organizations that carry out an interview when a candidate wants to leave or to resign. So the reason for this is that they want to know the feelings of the outgoing employees towards the organization. They want to know the problem. Is it something that they could have done? Is it, how do they feel about their fellow workers now who will be their former colleagues, are they okay with the rules of the organization? Just leading to give them an impression of how it would be in terms of, is there anything that we can improve? Is there anything that we can do better? So it's good for the organization to be able to rectify any areas that have defects through the exit interview. And so that we have also walk-in interviews, again, very rare in Kenya, but I know that other countries do have walk-in interviews where they have an open day for open positions, and they just ask anyone who believes that they are qualified to walk in, to just come in with their CVs, their certificates, and so on. So you do not need to send your interview in advance for this. So during the interview, the candidates are just told to submit the application and testimonials in support of their qualifications. It's good because the walk-in interviews also allows the candidates to come and see their potential working environment, to meet with the people who work there. So some of the things that could happen is when they walk in, they can be asked questions in the area of specialization, in also in line with the job requirement that is there. It's also a good way for companies to collect information in terms of people who'd like to work for them. I think it's good for them to be able to create a database. So in case they have any potential job openings in the future, they're able to contact the people who've already shown interest through the walk-in interviews and tell them that we have these openings, would you want to apply? Yeah, so the eighth one is the panel or board interviews. A lot of Kenyan interviews are panel and board, especially when the company is hiring for itself. Say they do not come to a recruiter such as us, they just go directly. You will find that sitting on the board would be maybe the finance director, the HR manager, the department head, and so on and so forth. So mostly you'll find it a group or a panel depending on where it is. So what happens, the beauty of this is that it's group judgment. Every person on the panel gets to judge the candidates. So most of the time they have a scoring sheet where they're able to rank the candidate in order of merit. So based on how you are answering the questions, the industry knowledge, and so on. So for some key positions such as the CEO, the board is likely to interview. And we've seen that in our case where if you're hiring a CEO who is not, it's not a top position. I mean, a CEO, there's no one in the company that is able. So the HR can assist in hiring the CEO, but will not be able to gauge whether they'll be able to perform. So that's where the board of directors come in and they're able to interview the CEO. Some other people in the organization who they may be working directly with can also come, maybe like the finance manager or the procurement manager, and they can help with such an interview. So each member of the panel takes a turn to ask the questions. Again, they'll rank them based on the responses that they are giving. And then finally, we have the video or the phone interviews, where we've seen a rise in this during the pandemic. They were popular in companies that were looking to hire remotely. So say you have a company in Cyprus that wanted to hire someone either to start working in Kenya, they will do a lot of video interviews either through Skype. But now we've seen Zoom coming up, we've seen Google Hangouts, Albinus. So it's very interesting to note that we never imagined such a time would come when video phone interviews have become a thing. So for us, we do a lot of video for the first interviews. And then once in a while, the internet is going to fail us. And so we end up doing phone interviews. The reason for this is, the beauty of it is you get to see the person as they start the interview, and you can let them go on with the phone. But sometimes the disadvantage of this, if someone is doing a phone interview, you do not know if they're reading the answers. You cannot see them, unlike a face-to-face interview. So again, sometimes some people prefer this to judge the candidate's intelligence and also their interpersonal skills. How are they on the phone, and so on and so forth. So let me just move on to interview focus areas. So there are many more, but I'm going to look at 3 today. So we have one that is situational, and then we have behavioral, and then we have some that are job related. So with the situational, and I think maybe Albanous can help me testify to this, and even Paul, that a lot of people want to see what is your reaction in a hypothetical given situation, especially in areas where integrity is key. they want to see, say, for example, even customer service. If a customer comes and they're really angry, and how would you then act in a hypothetical situation? So they are doing this to be assessing whether the candidate's behavior is going to be reasonable. Are they going to be able to do the right judgment at that time? What is it exactly they'll be able to do? It's a very interesting thing. I think I have been asked this question a couple of times, and I think it's very good because they want to judge, how do you think through, what is your thought process? Are you actually quick to respond or to react, or are you actually someone who just sits back and thinks of the consequences that will come, and so on and so forth? So the next one is behavioral, also very much be related to situational. And in behavioral interviews, the interviewees are asked to describe how they related to actual situations in the past. So one of the ways that I've seen them asking is, have you ever been in a situation that needed you to come up with a solution? Or were you ever in a situation where you came out a champion? Or were you ever in a problem that you actually helped the company solve? So behavioral interviews are very intense, as they may begin with questions like, have you ever been in a position where you had to compromise your integrity? So a good example in Kenya would be in the media industry, where you can ask someone who's applying for that position, if a politician came to you with an envelope containing 100,000, would you take it to have him in the headlines every day, or would you compromise? And it's a tricky thing, because most of the people, especially if they're after money, they're like, wow, I wouldn't take it. But when you're in that situation, people want to really be able to react in the right way, really be able to make the right decisions. So when it's job related, the interviewer pretty much tries to examine the applicants on their job performance. So this is based on his or her answers to questions about past tasks. So you could be asked, for example, for you who's going into the business field, have you been in a situation where you've made losses, or you costed the company money? Or have you been, even if you're in an entry-level position, have you ever, maybe in your experience in your campus, been in a situation where you are maybe lost money? Yes. So to answer these questions, one of the things that we recommend is always you want to use the STAR method. So the STAR method allows you to look at the situation. What was the task ahead of you? What action did you take, and what were the results that you were able to come up with, or what was the solution, and so on. So when it comes to job-related focus, questions are very much, again, related on the job that is there. Say if you're in banking, you'll be asked, do you understand the queuing system? Do you understand the latest software when it comes to maybe counting, or even just analyzing? And so they're not hypothetical. They're not the situations that people come up with and say, okay, fine, this is what it is. No, they're just finding out whether you understand industry information or industry trends. And then the last one is stress interview. So this is very much related to the situational and behavioral. So what happens is the interviewer is trying to see, how do you behave when you're in a stressful situation? So are you able to keep your calm, or are you able to just lose it? So one of the ways that could happen is you could be kept waiting for a very long time before the interviewees could call you in. Say your interview was at 11, and then they keep you there for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, you're still there, 30 minutes, I mean, a whole hour you've been there, you're still waiting. So they want to see, are you patient? You know, do you have what it takes to be patient? It could also be that the interviewer can create tension and pressure, just to observe how you're responding. Again, it could be by interrupting you. So every time you go to answer a question, they interrupt you. So they're trying to see, if I keep pushing the button for this person, are they going to keep their calm, or are they going to lose it? It could also be criticizing your opinion. So, you say, I strongly believe in standing up for what I believe in. I strongly believe in being integral, or stuff like that. And they tell you, no, I don't think that is what matters in this industry, And so they just want to see, when you're in a stressful situation, do you have a tough skin? Do you have what it takes to make it in that particular field? So I'll just move on into interviewing during the pandemic. And so what has happened is that almost all interviews have gone digital using different platforms. People used to depend on face-to-face impression, and now it's no longer there. And so people have to dress to impress. And we've seen people letting their guard down. And that's why I'm saying that do not let your guard down just because it's a virtual interview. I think we've carried out a few interviews where people are wearing shorts, they are wearing sleeveless. And the first thing that comes to my mind is, if you are coming to our office to interview, would you still have the same clothes? So you also want to have a professional background with least interactions or noise. Again, this is very important. We have seen people interviewing with their friends passing in the background with a lot of noise. So you just want to remember that an interview is very important for you. You're taking this in order to take your next career step. And so you want to just take it with as enough seriousness as you want to be taken. So another thing that we ask during this pandemic, it's a long time that some companies are not hiring, but we've also seen that there's also a trend in companies hiring. So one of the things you want to do during this season is that you want to learn a new skill. There are very many free online courses. A lot of organizations opened their banks, their knowledge banks for people to learn new skills during this time. So you want to add a new skill, because that's one of the questions that people who've told us they have stayed home during the pandemic. We asked them, okay, fine, what skill did you learn during this time? Have you taken the time to actually learn something new? So one of the other things as you're going to interview during the pandemic is that you want to familiarize yourself with various digital communication tools. They are all free to download and try out. So even if you're invited for an interview on Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Google Hangouts, you just want to be able to familiarize yourself with it before the D-Day. All right, so which elements do you consider when participating in the business sector interview? So one of the things, because I understand from the academy, is that we have a lot of entry level, is that you want to showcase your accomplishments that the employers might find desirable, say some skills. So for example, if you've started a small business, there are things that you learn from starting that small business. And ideally you could have saved to start the business, and then you went to purchase, and then you probably have been trading. So those are some of the things that stand out for you as you're coming into interview in the business field. Or maybe at uni, you are a student leader, maybe you are the secretary who was in charge of events. So have you been able to contract vendors? Have you been able to be involved in procurement of services? Have you had to come up with a budget? So those are some of the things that will come up for you as an advantage in the business field, given the fact that maybe you do not have industry experience, but there are still skills that the employer might find very useful when it comes to hiring you. So one of the things that is important is that hard skills are very important, no doubt. But what soft skills are you coming up with? So hard skills are the technical ones that you learn in school. They're the ones that you learn, for example, CPK, CPA, and all those. Those are good skills. But what about the soft skills are you coming up with? So are you coming up with communication skills that are excellent? Are you taking yourself to public speaking classes? So when it comes to now business, maybe, for example, have you been a treasurer either in a club or at church? So some of those things will also help you stand out when you're doing a business interview. So one of the other things is that you have to think of the client's needs. So when they're putting out that advertisement for, maybe you want to work in a financial service, a SACCO, a bank, or even just maybe you want to work even just here as an accountant. So what is it that the client needs that your skills and experience could help fill that gap? Say, for example, they're saying that we need someone who is prompt, who responds very quickly, who is able to meet our clients' needs when it comes to sending invoices and picking up checks. So you also have to think about that. So you also need to know your numbers and the industry trends. So when it comes to business, it's not your usual interview, because they want to see, do you actually understand revenue? Do you understand actually how income is generated, and so on and so forth? So one of the ways I would advise to do this is to read business newspapers, business books. What are the industry trends? There are a lot of online resources on the industry trends when it comes to business. Forbes is one of the best. So you can keep reading and understanding what exactly is going on in those industries. So when it comes to salary negotiations and expectations, I know this one is a hard one. I feel like everyone, once they're put in that room, especially when you've never had a job and they ask you, how much do you want to earn? People think, wow, I really don't know. And I think I've also been in that situation where I'm like, how do I answer this question? So one of the things that you want to do is that you want to do vast research. You want to look at some of the maybe websites that have salary scales. A good example is Glassdoor. You have PayScale, you have Indeed, and then you can also search for some positions that have salary mentioned for a similar position that you're applying for. Say you're applying just to be a business development person. So you want to go for some of our, actually most of our positions, we always put how much the pay range is. So we can put, for example, 90,000 to 120,000. So you want to look at many positions and then now gauge yourself based on that. So when you're answering, you want to consider what is your experience as compared to how many years. So do you have 1 year experience? So for example, if you have 1 year experience, there's no way you'll be asking for 200,000. You have to think a person with 1 year experience, and you also want to talk to people that you know in that industry. Say, for example, you have an auntie, an uncle, a friend, a relative who has worked in the banking field. You also want to ask them, say, if I have 1 year or 2 years of experience, how much should I be looking at based on this? And you also want to know your worth. And the reason I say this is because sometimes people come for interviews and they're really good. But because the people sitting on that panel are a bit intimidating, and you see clients, interviewers asking you, so how much do you want to earn? And someone says, well, I'll take whatever you're giving me. And someone says, okay, fine, we'll give you 20,000. And you know you're very well worth much more than that. So it's very important for you to know your worth and how much you're willing to accept. Say you already have done your research, you know that for this position, they pay, let's say, 50,000 Kenya shillings. So you can say, okay, fine, because maybe I'm changing, I'm only beginning, how much am I willing to accept? And then maybe over time, as you build your experience and your career, you can be able to say, okay, fine, I think now I deserve 60,000, 70,000, and so much more. And also, how much are you willing to compromise? So say, for example, we've seen that during the pandemic, there's been job cuts. We've seen that many companies have been affected economically. They're not doing so well. So you can say, okay, fine, in my previous job, I was earning 50,000, but because of the pandemic, I am willing to compromise to earn 35,000 because I know that once the country goes back to normal, I'll be able to go back to how much I was earning. And you also have to think about the skills and value you're bringing to the table. Say, for example, you finished your undergraduate degree and you have decided to go for an MBA, or you even decided to go for another master's that is either in the business field or unrelated. You have to remember that the education that you're adding is also value as well. The number of years you're adding to your experience is also value as well. So I think I am done to my last slide, and I will say thank you so much for giving me audience. So the last slide has our information, and you can go to our website and just check any other missing information that you may want to even just further your knowledge on. And we do have a YouTube video that tells you about us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Njeri. That was great and extremely thorough. So let's just move along to our next presenter, Alba. And remember, everyone, at the end, you please use the Q&A feature for questions for any one of the three. All right, welcome, Alba, and we thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lisa. So just a quick one. I'm sharing experiences for hiring on not-for-profit organizations or NGOs. And much of what Njeri has shared really reflects the types of interviews that would wish to start discussion around. So I would want to start with the types of interviews and let you know that in non-profit organizations, interviews are taken seriously. But again, most of the time you see that the interviewers are more relaxed and casual. Don't be cheated on this, because when you find a team that is so relaxed and then you let your guard down, then you're really going to perform awfully poorly, because you get a bit of a relaxation. But over time, interviews have evolved, and employers are devising different ways to get to find value, find the best talent, and see that they can capitalize on the best that the market can offer. So normally the process starts with your applications, then we get to do a short listing, and then we find our short list. And one of the key features that I've seen trending now is the use of telephone interviews. This is more like a screening phase, that you get a call from a hiring manager, and we'll do a quick screen to check on your eligibility and share more about your qualification, your education, and all that. But as you're doing this, then you'll be able to gauge whether we are getting you into the subsequent interviews or not. With the new developments, I think there's so much going around through Skype interviews, but mostly the screening interviews are phone, and so much emphasis on audio. And this places you in a good place. I know Njeri shared a bit on this, but what you need to do is just be in a comfortable place. Don't pick your calls in a noisy place. And if you're getting a call and you're feeling the place is not comfortable, just excuse yourself, request for like 15 or so minutes, then you can be called when you're so much settled. Prepare, have your notes with you, and let yourself have a natural discussion. This is more like a discussion. Just do your natural way of talking. Don't be too bubbly. Check on your tones. Too much variation might create a situation that there's something you're hiding. But in everything that you're doing, as much as you're not seeing the interviewer, make sure that you respond intelligently and very crisp and precise in your responses. Then we have our traditional face-to-face interviews. This is where you're having a one-on-one, probably in a boardroom or in another venue. It's very common. Within the non-profit sector, mostly you'll have this interview with two people. One should be a person from the human resource department, and the other one from the department that is hiring. So if, say, for example, you're into programs, then you get someone in programs and a HR person. And they'll discuss mostly your skills and qualification. So you need to be very sure, understand your resume, be systematic in how you address your qualifications, in how you address your education, qualification, and professional qualifications. You need to make sure that you start with the most recent as you're answering your questions, because sometimes the interest fades off. And if you start, sharing your high school qualifications, and probably you have a PhD or you have your master's, by the time you come share the content of your master course, part of the people who are interviewing might be not that much attentive. So you need to do very good preparation. And the other bit that comes out very common is they'll need to gauge how well you understand the organization. This is more to see your interest in the work, but also your interest that you've done some research on the organization. Much of it is a question on what do you know about this organization. So make sure you've done quite some research. You have a good understanding of your skill set. You have a good understanding, grasp of your qualifications, and you also have a good understanding of the organization. The next interview is a panel interview. And the panel interview involves quite a number of people. And when it's done, definitely you get a human resource personnel sitting in the interview, and representatives of the various departments that work closely with the hiring department. So for example, in a non-profit, you see programs, you get someone from finance, you get someone from monitoring and evaluation, you get someone from the HR department, definitely a team of around 4 people. And with this, it is advantageous because you don't need to have a series of interviews with various other people. But the concern here, what you need to be very keen about is that the questions are not methodical, I would say so. Every member of the team can shoot a question at any time. So you'll need to be very alert. You need to pay attention. Sometimes you'll be asked a question and another member of the panel will repeat the same question, but in a twisted way. Again, consistency is very key here. And as you're responding, make sure that you're addressing the person who is asking the question directly. It's very important to maintain eye contact. Don't stare. Just make sure that you maintain eye contact and you're able to show your keenness and your interest. The other bit is type of interview is group interview. And in the group interview, these are cases where you have several candidates that are put together so that they can be able to do a common task, sometimes maybe answering a common question. In non-profit, this is so common in the health sector. Like when you're recruiting for peer educators, you're recruiting for community health volunteers, you just bring all of them together into a room and into one group, and you'll address them jointly. But as you're posing the questions, then you're able to assess who is responding mainly to most of the questions. But when you're getting a common task, most of it will be like doing a case story. You'll be able to be asked like, this is the situation on the ground. You're just on a rally and someone has fainted. How do you respond? So how you respond as a team, you might be given a dummy. And as you respond as a team, they are looking at the participation of each and every member. And one of the main things that the recruiters are looking at is to see how do you fit in that group? How well do you work with others? Because these involve more of team positions, team efforts. From a business perspective, probably to be recruiting for sales and marketing team members, such kind of positions. One thing that is a tip that I'll give you to be very keen on is that this is not a competition. So don't work so hard to outshine everybody, but look at it more like collaboration. Find a middle ground. Don't be dominant and also don't be dormant. So a middle ground will be much better. Be keen, listen to your other team members so that as you're making your contribution, you're not repeating what was or has earlier been shared by some of the team members. The other most common interview is the case interview. And case interviews are more like follow-up interviews. So you've done your phone screening interview, then the face-to-face interview, and the recruiting team feels that there is something, there is potential in this candidate. So most of the time you'll be given a case study, probably asked, this is the problem, you know, an imaginary location, village, we are having a high prevalence of HIV and AIDS, and these are the gender distribution of population and all this. And then you're asked, can you be able to design a pilot project that can help address the situation of the high prevalence? So you have to now sit down, work out your design strategy and develop a project and solutions. So when you design this project, one of the things that we are really keen on is the strategies towards the solution. So you have to have very good analytical skills. You have to ensure that you articulate a step-by-step approach on how you're solving your problem. And we also want to assess how well you understand the industry. So industry knowledge, very, very, very critical. And the other key area that most recruiters look at is the process. How do you articulate your process? From the needs assessment to the intervention, to your monitoring and evaluation plan, to your budgeting, up to the final project implementation. So that process is critical. The final answer might not necessarily matter a lot, but we would want to see how well do you understand the program project management cycle. I've seen a number of situations where you're invited for a meal, or you're invited for lunch, or you're invited for a cup of coffee. And this, at times, you'll think it's just a normal catch-up. Probably you've done your first phone interview screening, and then you're told that, you know, we have an activity, we have a dinner, and would wish you to come and join our group. We are having this engagement. And when you go there, you just need to be certain. You're never told that this is an interview process, but you have to be very, very alert and ensure that you conduct yourself in the best way possible. Other times you might get an opportunity to share lunch with a CEO or any other recruiting person. And this again is to gauge how do you behave in different situations. What are your interpersonal skills? What are your communication skills? They would want also to gauge how you're showing your level of confidence. When it comes to ordering food items, make sure that you order items that you're comfortable with, and give the interviewer your attention. You might have food on the table, but just know that this is an interview process, and you can be able to pay attention to the interviewer more. We have competency-based. We have competency-based interviews, and this is more on assessing your skill set. If you're like a technical person in an area, for example, if we are looking at monitoring and evaluation specialists, we are looking at community facilitation and mobilization specialists. So such interviews should be more on your skills, the hard skills. What do you have? How are you able to portray those skills? How are you able to implement? So the assessment is how these skills can be used in undertaking your daily or day-to-day activities and tasks within the organization. And mostly, if you are not given a real-time situation to assess, you'll be given a case story. So you might even be asked in a sit-in interview, given a certain situation, how would you be able to use your skills to improve that situation? So you'll need to articulate that well, and also show by using hard facts how this improvement has been over a period of time. I've also included follow-up interview that at times you might see a situation where you're getting several interviews that are following each other. You might have an interview with the department head and human resource manager. but again, they might like you and the CEO wants to have another interview with you, or the CEO asks one of the board members to, have a catch up with you. So this is more of a follow-up interview. It's a sign that you did well in your other interviews or in your first interview. And they just need to get probably a second opinion. They need to get more information about you. And again, the rule of thumb here is stay consistent. And I keep saying, take this as an opportunity, as your time to shine, because the kind of questions that you'll be asked are questions that you had already encountered in your other interviews, but in a different twist. So make sure that you are consistent and give it your best shot. There are so many interviews, but I would say these types that I've mentioned are the most common when it comes to non-profit organizations and NGOs, more so especially in Kenya. And I wanted to touch a bit on the interview questions. And I know one of the very common questions is that you're asked to talk about yourself. Tell us about yourself. How do you address this question? So when you ask such a question, this is your time to show why you are an excellent fit for that job. You make sure you answer this question without giving too much of personal information. Keep it a bit more formal. Your education background, your qualification, your hobbies, and make sure that you don't speak to it for more than 2 minutes. Then after that, if there is any additional probing, then you can leave that to the panel or to the interviewers to probe further. The other bit is I said about understanding the organization. Make sure that when you get to the interview, you've researched about the organization, and you have something that you can share through probably their mission, values, objective, the organization history, and what really turned you on, or what excites you. What do you find thrilling in that organization? The other question is why should the organization hire you? Most of the time, interviewees will be asked this question, and you'll see them, showing a very blank face, and you get concerned because you have now an opportunity to explain what you have to offer to the organization. Be confident, but not too overconfident to a point that you're showing, like a carefree attitude. But again, be very focused and concise in your responses. I have had an experience with checking the longevity of the applicants, the candidates. And a question that features most is, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, or 10 years, or 3 years? When you ask this question, just know that the intention of the interviewer is to see, is this a person who is going to stick around, or is this a person who will move on as soon as another better opportunity presents? So make sure you reiterate to the interviewer that the position aligns to your long-term goals. That in 3 or so 5 years, you're seeing yourself in a higher responsibility opportunity within the organization. The other question is, how do you want to, why did you leave your current job? Most of the candidates lose a good opportunity because of this question, because some decide that they would want to badmouth their previous employer. Others would want to talk ill about the company or the organization. And my tip here will be, just focus your answer on the future. Be very honest and ensure that the answer reflects the specific circumstances, but ensure you're always positive. For example, that most of the interviews will be saying that they are looking for greener pastures. Some others, maybe there's a situation, probably you left your job because you were sacked. And instead of coming clean, you say, I was having a very bad boss. So this reflects the kind of person you are. Are you a person who is easy to take instruction and such kind of thing? So make sure you just focus on your future, leave the past aside and concentrate on the future. Ensure that you're honest, but show progressive growth in your career as one of the reasons for moving from one job to another. Another question will be, what is your weakness? What is your weakness? And what are your strengths? Probably strengths, since it's positive, most of the candidates will respond pretty well. But when you ask about the weakness, there's another area that really needs someone to work around. You might be having weaknesses, but how can you look into these weaknesses in a positive light? Like your answer should always revolve around the positive aspects of your skills and abilities. You can give example of skills you have improved, how you recognize the weakness, and how you've stepped to convert that weakness into a strength. But when you just outline or mention a weakness and leave it at that, then that gives you very, very poor scores in that interview. The elephant in the room is how do you discuss your salary expectations? Most of the time in non-profit, in the NGO world, you might not be asked about your salary, about what you'd want to be paid, but mostly they would ask, what did you earn or in your previous job? When you're asked on what you earned in your previous job, you need to be very honest, because at times I've seen candidates that lie to this, and later they are asked to bring in a recommendation from the former workplace, and that shows their salary, and whatever they bring is complete opposite of what they shared. So just be honest if you're sharing that. But one piece of advice I will tell you, in the initial interview, it is not prudent to give a figure. It is not prudent to give a range of your salary expectations. And yours is to see how you fit well into the job, and finding a job that fits your career. And the moment you do that, then your responses will be more like, once I am able to get to be like the perfect fit for you, we can be able to have a discussion around this, because currently I don't have any specific figure or number in mind yet. Why I'm saying this, because sometimes you might share a range, you might share a specific figure without so much of researching around it, and you end up either selling yourself low, or second, you might end up selling yourself out of the job, because your offer, whatever you had requested, was so high compared to the offer that the organization was having in mind. So the trick to it, in the initial interview, don't give a figure, don't give a range. In the subsequent follow-up interviews, once you're confident that there is an interest in your potential, then give a range, but not a specific amount that you'd want to. Range is detected or defined more by the positions. So if you do your research, you'll know the position of a program officer, the position of a program manager, the position of a community facilitator. You'll be able to see the kind of salary ranges that are within that. So as you give that, just be very critical of your worth, be very critical of your qualification, be very critical of your years of experience, and also be very critical of your kind of what are you bringing into the organization. Most of the time I keep saying at the high senior management levels, funders or donors fund personalities and not more as organizations. So getting on board to an organization means that you also bring your network with you. So those are also some things that you consider what you're bringing on board when now you'd want to discuss your salary and your salary expectations. Lastly, I would want to let you know that the interview is more about selling yourself. You're pitching your skills, you're pitching your qualification, you're pitching how well you fit into an organization. The organization has a need for an employee with certain skill sets. You're providing that skill set. So we are looking at where is the match here. So when you do this, ensure as you go for your interviews, carry yourself with confidence. Another tip, mind your body language. You find some going for an interview and they just slouch on the seat and showing you don't have interest in what is going on. Others, you'll see them crossing their legs, a sign of tension, crossing your arms, a sign of tension, not maintaining eye contact, looking down every other time someone is speaking to you. So what you portray in the panel, there is someone who is trying to just see what communication is passed across by your body language. Then watch your word choices. What kind of words? Don't use too much slogan. Don't use very complicated technical jargon, even if that is a professional interview, because there are other people who are in the panel that probably might not be able to understand. Use very simple language and ensure that you're very, very precise. The other bit is on your outfit. NGOs mostly do not have a prescribed way of dressing, but ensure that always you're smart. You don't need to step into interviews with suits and ties, but you can do a smart casual and everyone will still take you serious and not necessarily to have your ties on. You also need to know what the interviewer wants. As an organization, you've done your research, you know the organization mission, you know the organization objectives. Definitely, you will be having an idea of what exactly they are looking out for. So capitalize on that. And if you're not able to gauge that pretty fast, then keep engaging the interviewer. It's more of a discussion. It is not an interrogation. So if you take it as a discussion, then it becomes much easier for you to find a comfortable space that you can be able to discuss more. The other bit is I like people who take interviews as an opportunity to shine. Put your strengths on display. You've taken so much time to get the qualifications that you're getting. And it's time now to translate what you have on the papers, that is your certificates, your qualification, and you need now to show that in your personality. So make sure you put your strengths on display, that everyone will be able to see what the kind of person you're interacting with. There is one last question that you will be asked, and this is towards the tail end of the interview, and where the head of the panel or the hiring manager, the human resource person, might ask you if you have any question for them. I've seen most of the candidates who say, I don't have a question. And that really puts the panel off, because they are feeling they are having a discussion with an intelligent person. So make sure you have a few questions ready. It helps because now the panel will feel like you were a prepared candidate and a candidate who is informed. But when you're asking these questions, please avoid questions of personal interest, like, salary increment, what is your policy on salary review, benefits like leave and compassionate and such. Avoid that in the first engagement. Ask one question at a time. You find someone say, ask where are you seeing this organization in the next 3 years? And if you're seeing the organization working in Kenya, which particular area in Kenya and in which thematic area? So these are 3 questions that are hopped into one, and it gets a bit confusing. Just ask one question at a time. And when you ask these questions, avoid questions that you get monotones in terms of answers, like a yes or a no. Ask open-ended questions that can ensure that there is more engagement. You're also using this opportunity to understand the organization, and you also to understand the persons that are working in the organization. The other bit is also ask questions about multiple topics. Don't dwell so much in just one area. You need to show diversity if you're asking questions. And one piece of advice I'll give you is that sometimes in the interview, things will go either way. You're getting there and you're interviewed, everything goes well, and you get your job offer, but then you decline because you feel the job offer does not fit what your expectations are. Or you decline because you after realizing that this organization is not an organization or an environment that I would wish to work in. So look at it from either way, that it's not the organization that is doing you so much of a favor, and neither are you doing so much of a favor to the organization. You're more of equal partners, and you can opt in, you can opt out, and this is an opportunity for the organization to gauge you as whether you're a good fit, but also for you to gauge whether this is an organization that you'd wish to work for. So I think I would want to leave it at that, so that we can open up. If you have any questions, then we can address them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alba. That was really interesting. Again, we are so lucky to have such great presenters, and we'll be moving on. We've got a couple of questions, but we definitely are, we've got one more panelist with Paul. I just want to thank everyone for staying with us during the great presentation so far, and look forward to Paul's and to questions you may have, scholars, to ask all 3 of them. So thank you. And Paul, welcome, and you can start.
Thank you very much, Lisa. So thank you from the 2 speakers that really touched on important aspects of today's discussion. And mine basically will be to look into this topic today on the aspect of interviews in the public jobs, and again, I'll also connect that one with the private sector, And majorly I'll be concentrating on the medical perspective, as we mentioned before. So what we need to realize is that interview for those seeking...
Excuse me, just one moment, Paul. Do you want to share your screen or do you want me to share it?
If you can share, I'd really appreciate.
Yes.
Great.
All right, just one moment, everyone.
Okay.
Share screen. Nope. There we go. Okay.
Okay, great. Maybe you can put it in slide mode.
Oh, yes.
Yes, please.
Let's see.
That is the bot. Okay. Okay.
Oh, whoops.
Oh.
Sorry.
Bottom right of the screen. You find it there.
Yes, no, I messed up the...
Okay, great.
No, I have it in here.
The next icon. There's an icon.
Yeah.
After the volume adjustment, the next one. The next icon.
Oh, there we go. No.
There's the last icon. That one. Where you
this
are.
one. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. Great. All right. So we're good to go.
Yes. Yes. Do you want this one or?
Okay. Let's go to the second one. Number 2. All right, great. So great. As I was mentioning about interview in that involving health sector, they're a little bit different. And remember here, whenever you're seeking work in the health sector, we usually tend to have 2 sets of interview questions. And this majorly comes from the HR department. That is somebody from the HR department. And again, you'll find somebody from your field. These are technical, could be a technical person. For example, perhaps a medical superintendent or any other person who is a medic who has been picked to chair the panel during the interview. So under this category, of course, you expect those from the HR department. These could be people who might not be having any idea or rather any clue as far as medical issues are concerned. But again, they have their part also to ask as regarding the job at hand. On the other hand, you will have these technical persons who will be asking you the hard skills, and this could be majorly they'll be dwelling on questions on competency based. Remember, when you are dealing with health and healthcare, you are dealing with life, and therefore, when you're dealing with life, there's a different approach to that. So the next slide. Oh, okay, specific questions. All right. So the questions to be asked. Sometimes I'll just share my experience. I attended an interview. This was a private sector in a hospital. And what happened, there was a panel, and the panel was, of course, made up of the 2 categories. So usually, under normal circumstances, the HR department will start, and then they'll finalize it with the hard questions from the medics. Sometimes they can opt to start on the other way around, or just to throw questions here and there, depending on how they are prepared to do that. Usually, whenever after you've been picked, you've been invited for an interview, it is important that you sharpen your skills. And when you're sharpening your skills, you'll have 2 issues to deal with. One is the technical aspect of your job, and another thing is the general interview questions which can be asked to any other person. So our questions usually come from, as I mentioned, from a specific area. Perhaps I'm like in my field, I'm currently I'm a nurse, but working under accident and emergency department. And therefore, if I'm seeking a position under accident and emergency, there are specific things that you must know before you enter into such a department. And therefore, be prepared that questions will be asked. Majorly, most of your questions will come from that particular department. Another thing that you are likely to encounter is that there will be current global health issues. And this one we've seen. We currently have so much going around. We're just in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, and a lot is happening. We've heard of, vaccines development going on, some are failing, and therefore it will be interesting. The panel might ask you the current health issues which are really affecting the health sector, and therefore you should be prepared for this one. So it means that you need to read on the current issues, including the current research, and if possible, their outcomes. So on the interview, during the interview, the medical team are likely to give you, a scenario. They might ask you maybe a condition. Take for example, again, where I'm working as an accident and emergency nurse. So there are things that you might be given. An example is that they might ask you, okay, we have maybe person X. Walking into accident emergency, or maybe complaining of ABCD, and you are there, and you need to respond to the need. So what will you do? So this one will be testing on your question. If they might give you a condition directly as a topic, or they might leave you to come up. They just give you signs and symptoms, and it's your responsibility now to come up with possible topics, or rather possible conditions that might be presenting that way. And therefore, this is now the technical aspect of this. We go to the next one. All right. So, very important thing. Remember, you are dealing with life here. So we don't anticipate that you are going to gamble with your answers. If we ask you that we have a particular condition that requires a particular type of medicine, maybe medicine A, and therefore you end up giving B, already that one you will be failing in that interview on that interview on the medical aspect of it. I remember the big picture here is about you with the job. So your job here involves the medical aspect of it. And therefore, if you start guessing, that means that you are not competent enough to handle that particular position. Sometimes you might be lucky enough. Some interviewers might give you an opportunity to pick on maybe a particular topic or a medical condition or surgical, and therefore they'll allow you to discuss on that. If you happen to have that opportunity, although they are very rare, but if it happened to come, please do pick up a condition that you are comfortable with to handle, just from the clinical presentation all the way to management and the outcome. Do not go into a bigger condition that might be giving you problems. And then another thing that you'll be required is that within the medical field, we have things, we have the aspect of health policies and scope of practice. And this one will include the ethical legal issues. And you might also be asked on the same, like policies. We have, in the health sector, we have so many policies, that might be asked. A good example is in Kenya, we have a policy regarding treating, giving first aid to all citizens, whether they have money or not. You have to give the first aid. So you might be asked, okay, you have a patient who walks into perhaps a private hospital, and you are the person who is receiving this patient, but the patient has no money at all. And it's a private hospital, and we want money. What will you do? So that will be testing on whether you know the government policies regarding dealing with accidents and emergencies, whether there's money or not. Another aspect is about the scope of practice. So you should be very, very familiarized with your scope of practice, so that you don't end up doing a particular thing, or rather performing a particular procedure which is not within your scope of practice, because that one will result into legal medical issues that might put the hospital in a very serious situations. The next one, Lisa, please. Thank you. So as I mentioned, our main concern today was about dealing with the public versus private job interview. And this one I'm only handling with respect to medical sector. And one of the things about the focus. So what is the focus of the interview? So when you're working in the private sector, so I'm giving this one because I've been in both ends, both private and the government. I mean the public sector. So the private sector, their focus mainly is about problem solving. So it's about when we hire you, what value are you bringing into our facility? On the other hand, the public sector will mostly dwell on the experience. So like, okay, you are stepping in, this is your new job, or perhaps you've done your internship and therefore you are bringing in some new set of skills in this field. And therefore they will be very much interested to know whether you have experience in this field or not. And for the experience, the government will gauge, they usually use your academic qualifications. So whether they'll want to know whether you qualified maybe with a diploma or a degree or master's. So they are very much interested in that one. Why are they interested in that one? Is because government payments, or rather salaries, are attached to the academic qualifications. And therefore you will find that, okay, you are entering this job perhaps as a degree holder. So there's a category for a degree, any degree holder that joins at that particular time. For the medical field, if you are in Kenya, for example, if you have a degree, usually when you join the government or rather public sector, you are automatically being categorized as job group K. When we are talking about job categorization, is where that's the group where you'll be put based with your academic qualifications. And that one will determine the amount to be paid in terms of salaries. However, in the private sector, they'll be interested, as much as you have your degree qualifications, they'll also be interested in other aspects, like, okay, after your graduation, have you taken any maybe short courses, or do you have any certificates apart from the degree or the diploma that you have? And therefore, with what you call add-on certificates, that could be perhaps after my graduation, perhaps I've done something on, what we call advanced cardiovascular, maybe resuscitation. Maybe I have a certificate, maybe in a diabetic management. And therefore, they will be seeing you as somebody who will bringing something into the facility. Apart from the degree that you have, there's something that you're also bringing, which is unique to you as an individual. And then when we're looking at the kind of questions that will be asked, in government, questions will majorly relate to your work and profile. So when I'm talking about work, okay, you graduated in maybe school ABC. After that, maybe you've worked in this and this one. So they're trying to gauge how many years of experience do you have. All right. But again, on the other side, on the private sector, their questions will be much of problem solving, what you call the brain teasers testing. They're trying to test your aptitude. In advance of scenarios, the things that you are able to do, and this one they can also gauge, they can use this one to gauge you in terms of your expertise. And another thing that comes out clearly, during job advert, usually when we have public job advertisements, what happens that they create a pool and you need to apply. So if you're an applicant, you need to apply. And their interview starts after the closure of the stated date, the end of the date. That's when they bring all the whatever they have received, all the applications, and then start the shortlisting. However, in the private sector, if today maybe a private sector, they can advertise a job today, and it goes online, for example, today, and tomorrow they happen to get a candidate who is likely, or rather, a candidate who is likely to fit the position, they will start interview as soon as possible. And you might be surprised. They might end up filling the position before even the deadline date is over. And this one happens private, and also the NGOs. This is what they usually do. Their aim is to get a candidate who is fitting their job description as stated in their advert. So in the private sector, as I mentioned, they're after competency, standards. That's the competency and standard. And as I mentioned here, it's about value for money. So if I'm in a private sector and I want to hire you, it's about what are you bringing to me that will translate to what I'm giving you. The next slide. Oh, we're done with that. Yes, and so just to add on that also, about we've mentioned about salary. This is I know this becomes a huge question during interview, and I said the two speakers, that is Alba and Njeri, have really handled it so well. But I'll also give you a scenario. My current job where I am, I was asked the same questions about, okay, now what are your salary expectations? So I just want to give you some of the things that you can use to gauge how much you need to earn. One of the things is that, one of the things that you should be in a position to know your value. Do not underrate your value. If you know that, okay, I'm supposed to be paid maybe $200 in a month, and then you go asking for, $50, then one of the things that it shows that you are desperate for that job. Secondly, it shows that you don't know your value, and at the same time, it shows that you don't have a clue of how much that job is supposed to be paying overall. So what you're supposed to do when you're dealing with issues to do with salary expectations. Number one is that you must do a proper research on how much your position, the position you're applying for, is giving. This, as you've been, I think the places that they have been given, where you can search those. So apart from those ones, the online ones, you can also get friends. If you happen to have a friend, or maybe you can ask, or even sometimes I usually see even people posting in social media, like, guys, this company, how much is this company supposed to pay, for this particular of job, or rather this position. And therefore, by the time you'll be in an interview room, automatically you'll gauge, this is what I'm supposed to get. Maybe as Paul, this is what this is my worth. But again, in an event that you have add-ons, this is majorly on the private sector. If you have add-on certificates, you've done something on top of on top of your degree or diploma certificates, then that one has to come out clearly. It should be a value because, of course, you paid for that and it's already value for them. But what I usually advise people is that when giving the salary, do not, what we usually say is that you do not, if you realize that the range of this one is maybe they're paying between $200 to $400 for this particular job, do not come so much down, like maybe let me ask like 200, I mean, let me ask like 150. Just go something arrange. Okay, it's about 200. This job is paying 200 to 400. So for my case, I'll be like, okay, because you are negotiating already, and therefore you will need to give a range, and this range has to be close, so such that if you are this company, the position is paying 200 to 400. All right. So give a range that is so close. Let's say, for example, I'll go for, okay, if you pay me like 350 to 400 or 300 to 400. You'll best your facts with what already you have at hand. That I'm talking about the extra done, the other courses that you've done post that, and which are, of course, you can justify that they can bring success to the company. Then that one you can base on that one. Another thing that happens is that you've left your job, or rather you're in a job. But this is a scenario that happened to me. I was working for a particular hospital, and then I used to go to another hospital for part-time. So they were interested in my work, in having me being one of their staffs. And therefore, they scheduled for interview. And this time round, I faced a panel, and finally, I moved to facing the CEO of the company. So they offered me a salary, which was very close to what I was earning in this other hospital. I think the difference was about a difference of around 1,000 shillings. That's 1,000 Kenya shillings. So when I was asked that question, okay, Paul, we are giving this one. This is what we are giving you. But now I had to to negotiate with them and tell them, where I'm working currently, this is what I'm being paid. And on this other hand, whatever you are offering to me is 1,000 higher than what I'm being paid on the other side. However, the distance from my place where I'm staying to this facility, to your facility, and the distance from my home to my current facility, in terms of the bus fare, I feel that whatever you're adding to me will be used on the way. And therefore, I will not be adding value as far as salary is concerned. And my argument eventually, gave me fruits after meeting the CEO. So always try your best to bring this aspect of, other experience years that you have. However, in government, salary negotiations are difficult, is somehow difficult because you have a degree, job group K. And job group K, that one has to be, the salary has to be defined by, the Salary and Remuneration Commission. They are the one coming up, okay, this group, this is what we are giving. This group, this is what we are giving. The only difference that will come is about how many years have you served. That's when you can be moved from one group to the next group. So moving from one group to the next group means that you will be gaining value in terms of salaries. Thank you very much.
Paul, thank you very much. That was very interesting and informative, giving us a lot of knowledge about the government sector. I know we have gone over our time, but we do have at least 2 questions that people have posed. So I invite all the panelists to turn on their videos so we can see you all, your videos and your audio. And I will read out the first question. This one comes from Peter Gatucha from Kenya. It's a 2-part question. He says, if I'm a volunteer, working either full-time or part-time in an institution or organization, and I don't have anything to show, such as documents, letters, recommendations, certificate, or anything else, and I'm invited for an interview, should I consider myself to have experience? And then kind of related, if he's working at two at the same time, a part-time job in each, would he consider himself to have double or single? For example, being in a job for 2 years in 2 different institutions, is this 2 years experience or 4 years experience? So let's see, who would like to tackle that one?
I think I would want to take that up, and
Great.
just to let him know that most of the time we base so much of our qualification on paper, the kind of certificates, the kind of letters. You find someone doing some volunteer work, and at the end of the stint, he wants a letter of recommendation or something to show that he volunteered in that organization. I would say that when hiring for non-profit, that is not a very critical piece of paper. What is important, you have to score that as your experience, but as we are interviewing, we would want to gauge exactly what did you learn when you're doing that voluntary engagement. So if you're able to vouch for it and you're able to explain your roles and the kind of skill that you gained and the kind of experience that you gained, then that will be scored as experience for you. So don't bother so much about the papers. It's about your credibility on how you present yourself. The second bit, that's why I was laughing about it, that the years of experience, I find it much easier and better to quantify it in terms of the calendar year as is, and not in terms of job engagements. At times, whatever you're doing is part-time, so it's not a full-time job, but you're having 2 different full-time engagements, but this still within the same calendar year. So what you do is you pick the skill set. If in one area you are doing, let me say if you're in the NGO field, one area you are doing community mobilization and research, and in another area you're doing program or project implementation. So it's easy for you to score and say, I have 2-year experience in community mobilization and research, and also in project planning, but you won't say 4 years experience. You quote the skill set.
Great, thank you very much. And this one from David, also of Kenya. In a situation where you've done research on how the organization pays its workers, but during an interview you realize that they want to pay you way lower than what you expected, is it in order to negotiate there and then? Maybe Njeri, you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So I think in a situation where David is talking about, one of the things that you do is you only get into salary negotiations after you've been offered the position. So if you negotiate too early, it might be a scenario of where it might be used to gauge you. And yes, you do know how much they are offering, but you might also want to find out expect, and then you tell us, and you ask, is it with the budget? So funds are not up to par.
Well, I think we've lost Njeri a little bit, but certainly got the main point that you would want to negotiate once you are closer to being offered the position, not in the early sessions.
Actually, negotiating in the early sessions portrays an impression that you're all about the money and not the job itself. So as I said, in the initial interviews, concentrate on showing that you're the perfect fit for the organization. And the follow-up interviews, when you feel that they've really seen your potential, then you can be able to negotiate.
Great. I had a question come in here about company benefits. How can we learn about company benefits, and do we ask about this during an interview?
I think I'll confidently tell you this, that the benefit bit will not come in the first interview. The benefit bill, the benefit issues will come later, way later. But in the follow-up interviews, it's prudent, if you're so keen, you can be able, in a very tactful way, just get a question in on what are the company policy around the benefit. So you take a particular benefit. Don't be too broad in it. Just take a particular thing, like staff development. What is your policy on staff development? So this does not show that you're so much interested in your personal issues, but more through answering that, then you'll know where you're positioning yourself. But when it comes, once they've identified you as the right candidate, you will have ample time to discuss your salary. You'll have ample time to discuss all the benefits. You'll have ample time to negotiate.
Great, thank you. I have one question here for Paul. What can someone in an interview say when moving from the for-profit world to the nonprofit or public sector world if they have no experience in it? How can they stand out?
They're moving from public to private?
No, the private to public.
Private to public. I think moving from private to public usually happens. And we've seen quite a number of people moving from private to public. Of course, one of the reasons is about public sector offers you a job security as opposed to private sector. And therefore, when you're moving from private to public, the most important thing will be based on your qualifications. What do you have in terms of academics? And then after academics, what they'll do next that they'll want to see is about your more of your skills, though skills will come as a result of the number of years that you've served. Yes.
Great, great. Well, we had another question oh, good. Njeri, this question, and this may be our last one, so we can let everyone get on with their evening or their day, but this is a good one about salary. In your experience, are annual salary raises common in Kenya, in the corporate world? Perhaps.
Come up again, please, Lisa.
Well, I was directing this to Njeri, but it's. Oh. Are you there? Okay. Oh, I think we've lost her with her spotty connection. Well, okay. How about Alba? Is that common in the nonprofit world to have an annual salary raise?
Yes, that is very common. Actually, the trend in non-formal, non-profit organization has changed now because we hire based on contractual years. So you might sign a contract, probably a 1 year or 2 year contract. When you get to contract renewal, then you get a chance to have a salary review. Most of the time you get a review that is in line with the inflation rate. So it might range between 10 to 15%. Inflation in the country is around 8%. So you're getting like a 7% raise factoring in the inflation. So that is dependent on organization policy. So when you get to your HR policy, then you see the kind of percentage increment in terms of salary review. But then there are other things that might also bring you to the table to discuss a further review, especially in the public sector, when you've had an increment in your academic qualification, if you have a new course, then when you're having this review, then that's the time to bring in your new course, and it will increase the kind of percentage that you get.
Great.
And,
well, yes, Paul.
Add on? Yes, regarding salary review, basically in Kenya, usually when, let's say you joined a job group for today, for example, today, usually after 3 years, there's a review of the same, and people tend to to have salary increment. They move from one category to another. So automatically that one will mean that you'll be added something. Secondly, another way of doing this is through, we've been having through the labor ministry, whereby every year the government might decide, well, we are increasing salary maybe by 5% or by 2%. So that one will cut across all people working, especially in the government, facilities. So that by doing that, salary, there'll be an increment on the other side also.
Great. Thank you. I know we have lots more we could talk about, but we have kept everyone for much longer than we had originally scheduled for. It's been a great experience, so interesting. We very much appreciate our panelists, our 3 professionals joining us and giving all kinds of background, tips, advice. I'd like to end this with a big thank you to Njeri, to Alba, to Paul, and we look forward to further collaboration, possibly in the future. Scholars, thank you for staying with us and learning about the interview types, and we will see you all next week. Thank you again, panelists, very much.
Thank you.
Bye now.
You're welcome.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. All right, bye.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye.